Hi everybody and welcome back. Today we're going to be talking about something very new, something that I just invented, been working on for a while now, and really want to showcase this to the world and let you in on a new term that we're going to be using in tack planning and construction. So stick around, you are not going to want to miss this. Okay, so I'm hopping right in to Excel, and obviously as you start to work with tack planning, this is something that's going to be, something that you're going to be using. Excel is your friend, your best friend, especially when it comes to tack planning. Once you go out and start doing tack control, there can be tons of different processes and things that you start to use on your construction project. So let's dive right in. Obviously, you can see how these are all of your tack wagons and how you're going to flow through the work. But a lot of times people see this and are like, oh, that's a hotel, or oh, that's multifamily, or oh, that's something that applies to, a type of construction that is very, super repetitive, very cookie cutter, not what I do. The problem is there's a lot of work to get any type of schedule or work to look like this. And even hotels, or even things that you think might be cookie cutter, aren't just, hey, this is exactly how it works. You might have certain trades or scopes of work that take longer than others within the workflow. And so if you're doing that over time, you're going to have inefficiency gaps, which is the first term that I'm going to start using, inefficiency gaps. I've had a couple different videos on multiple channels about inefficiency gaps, so we're going to dive into that today. But these inefficiency gaps are caused by two major things. So let's dive in. The first thing that causes this inefficiency gapping, like you can see right here, that we're going to talk about, are the different rates of production. So you can see how this yellow has a rate of production, this green has a rate of production, and they're different. And that's what causes this white space here to exist between them. And then you see a faster rate of production after, and so you see that gap right there form after. And so these inefficiency gaps happen throughout all of our schedules, and this is exactly what happens. This is exactly what's happening in construction today. At best, with the current tools that we're using, we can get what is called resource efficiency. That's what happens here in this image. So as we are focused on each individual trade, we don't want them to ever stop. And so we want to make sure they're efficient. That resource becomes super efficient. The thing is, we have lots of gaps in there, and so our workflow is not good. So how do we combat this? Well, we have to understand what is happening here. And the first thing that we need to understand is bottlenecks. So what is our bottleneck? This red or pink cell, that maybe these three right here, maybe let's talk about them in weeks. So these 3 weeks for each area, for this pink scope of work, takes the longest out of all the other production rates. This one takes a week per area, this one takes 2 weeks per area, and so on. And that's what creates the actual flow for our phase of work or for our project. The bottleneck is what dictates that flow. So as we look at this bottleneck, we see that it has the largest inefficiency gap before and after it. But what is the inefficiency gap being caused by the actual bottleneck? Here's a clue. It's not both of them. The inefficiency gap below and the inefficiency gap above are not caused by the bottleneck. Only one of them. If you're watching this on YouTube, pause the video, think about that, and drop a comment below on which inefficiency gap you think is caused by the bottleneck. And see if what I'm thinking matches what you think, and see if you agree with my hypothesis. So let's go down. I'll show you what I think. The bottleneck inefficiency gap is actually the bottom one. And let me draw it out for you. So if you have this, let me get my pen. If you have this production rate right here, then the reason why the inefficiency gap below appears is because you have a trade that is flowing faster than the actual bottleneck. And because of that, you get this gap. So this is the bottleneck inefficiency gap. But you might ask, why is this also not the bottleneck inefficiency gap? This is where I get to announce what the opposite of a bottleneck is. I've been studying this, and you always have two sides of the coin. You have a bottleneck that is the slowest rate of production that dictates the flow of your schedule. Conversely, you also have trades that go way too fast, and that's a problem. So I've always talked about having a bottleneck that you need to see if you can optimize, and your fast trades, see if you can slow them down so that you get equal production. But we've never had the actual term that I'm about to describe. So I'm super excited. The opposite of a bottleneck is a breakneck. Now, what's a breakneck? Something that is going at breakneck speed. That's kind of a play on words, but really, it's something that is going way too fast. So that's something that is a breakneck, and think about the opposite of a bottleneck. On the actual bottleneck itself, that pinch point, it's like things are pushing on that little pinch point, right? So it's pushing in. And so it's compressing, it's compressing on us, and so we feel that pressure. That's why we have to take the time it takes. Conversely, the breakneck, that wide flange, it's like they're getting pulled apart. And so that's that breakneck. It's like it's really breaking us down. So things are compressing us or breaking us down. Those are kind of the opposite. And the idea is to get that flow and everyone working the same rate, the same distance apart. The breakneck are trades that are going way too fast. So looking at this, we have our breakneck, which is right here. And we can see that this rate of production is faster than the trade behind it. And it happens to be our bottleneck. So let's compare. We wouldn't want to start this work back here. Why is that? Think about that for a minute. Instead of me lecturing you and saying, hey, this is what it is, think about that. Why don't we want to start the breakneck sooner? If you're coming to the same conclusion that I have come to, it's because we don't want to start that work and then stop because the bottleneck work before it or the work before it is not complete. So we wait to bring out that breakneck activity or scope or trade so that they can flow through all of the work and be efficient. We don't want them to come out and have to mobilize multiple times. That would cost more money. That wouldn't be efficient. That's not good. We don't want that. We want resource efficiency, right? So we wait and we wait. And all that time that we might be able to work, we're not. And so that is wasted time in the system. So my revelation is that the breakneck inefficiency gap is the one that's on top. All inefficiency gaps that are on top, this one, and this one, and this one, and this one, are all caused by breaknecks. Every single one of them. So look at all of them and study this schedule. Every single one of them has a trade that's going way too fast. That one, that one, that one, and that one. So now that we know that we actually have a bottleneck, which is the slowest, and a breakneck, which is the fastest, the idea is, can we optimize the bottleneck and slow down the breakneck to get steady production? That is the key here. This is part of the leveling effort. We talk about getting production aligned and leveling the work. We might do that with work packaging. We might do that a myriad of ways. But really, a real great way to look at this is looking at our bottlenecks and looking at our breaknecks. So let's look at that here. The top version of the schedule, we have a couple of breaknecks. We also have a bottleneck. But let's not just say we slow everything down and speed everything up. That might not work. So I'll give you three different options here. I'm going to slow down 3 of my breaknecks. I'm going to see if I can optimize one of my bottlenecks, and I'm also going to be utilizing work packaging to get a steady flow. That's how you go from the top visual to the bottom visual on this screen. So let's look at that. Let's say that just like, and for those of you that haven't read the goal, I highly recommend reading the goal. Think about it if you've read the goal. What do they find? They find that the NCX and heat treat are the 2 bottleneck resources, and those are the things that they try to optimize. Once they optimize it, they find that there's things that are going too fast, and they have to slow down the rate of production and manage that rate of production in the plant at certain locations to optimize the flow of the entire plant. This is what we're doing. This is how the goal and the theory of constraints actually apply to construction. So let's talk about the actual bottleneck activity here. We have this 3-block activity that is our bottleneck that we need to optimize in some way. The easy thing is just say, well, add more resources, add more people, add more builders, right? So that can be the case. I think at about 50 to 40% of the time. That's what I've found. So what do we do with the rest of the time? What do we do the rest of the time? So I've found that there are a ton of different ways. We could talk about prefabrication. We could talk about pre-kitting. We could talk about, pre-cutting or building some of the work outside the building and then bringing it in to the actual space that you're going to be working for those other 2 times. So if we have those 2 cells that we want to get down to, and we're at 3, it could be that that first week or that first block, we're outside or in a different location that is not right there where the work needs to be installed. And it could be stick framing elsewhere and then taking that assembly in and building it. It could be that we're building a duct, a certain run of duct, and we bring it into the building and then we, jack it up or whatever. I don't know. It really it depends on the type of work and logistically, can we make that work? All sorts of different things. But that is an option. We can look at different processes and different tools, newer tools, and maybe there's different things that we can do in order to increase that rate. But that is some other things that we can do in order to optimize that production of our bottleneck. So that's what we can do there. But let's talk about breaknecks. Now with the breaknecks, our fast trades, it can be that we can slow down production by having less resources or less crews or less builders or less workers, right? But I think most of the time between 50 and 60%, that works. But for the rest of it, what do we do? So I have a couple options, but I want to tell you a story with one that I did with a team recently. So I was working with a team, and it was a very, very large site. This was I want to say 200-acre site, really big. They had excavation, they had, lots of cut and fill, they had retaining walls, they had dewatering, they had rough grade, they had all sorts of stuff up front that they wanted to do area by area. And this was kind of the schedule they gave us for large portions of the job site. Okay, we're going to do all the cut and fill kind of in this section. We can balance here. Then we're going to move over here, balance here, move over here, balance it, right? And so that's how they kind of broke it up into these areas. But then it was, okay, afterwards we're going to bring in our curb machine, our slip machine, and we're going to slip basically the whole job site and then tie in where our sewer is and tie in where our corners are, right? All that stuff. Most of it was with the slip machine, and it was way fast. So you can see that the first with the brown, then with the gray kind of vertical, and then we had paving and electrical work for lighting and stuff like that on this project site, right? So that was kind of the idea there, and so that's what formed those 2 large inefficiency gaps on either side. It wasn't our bottlenecks, it was a breakneck right in the middle of them. So with that, we have this breakneck that if we fix, we could gain a lot of time. So how do we fix that? And in looking at it, we were talking about, well, could it be a different slip machine, maybe a smaller slip machine, or what could we do there? And I forget if it was the superintendent or someone on the call. They're like, well, we could hand form the whole thing with a small crew and probably keep that same duration. And we all sat there for a minute and it was like, that doesn't sound right. But that could work. And what would that do? And we started talking about it. It was like, well, this is, yeah, that could work. We could pick a small crew and hand form the whole thing. And it would be about 3 of those same blocks for each one of those areas. Yeah, actually this works really nice. And it actually helps us with our manpower account, because like we're worried about having all the people dedicated to do that work. So yeah, that actually works. So they decided to hand form the entire huge job site. And then we looked at, okay, well, asphalt paving, if it comes in, we could still leave that efficiency gap between paving to make sure it flows all the way through. But we had talked in that meeting that, well, we had bought out way more mobilizations for paving because we were thinking we were going to do smaller chunks of paving. Well, if we did larger chunks of paving and kept the paver machine there might be times that it might be able to flow because some things might, we might run into issues or weather. And so like they decided, let's actually just bring that paving in and we'll just have these as our major mobilizations, but we have more if we need. And if we have any issues, we can eat into that and we can just flow. So that's what happened. And this is an actual replication of what we did in that plan that they ended up going and doing and building out in the field. So this is also a way that we could slow down the process. Old tools or old processes, or what else could we do with our processes in order to match that production rate or align production rates and not waste that time, but have that one piece flow. So this was a really great way. So you could see hand forming, it was crazy that was actually the case. So that's a way that we can slow down our breaknecks. And then lastly, I want to talk about work packaging. You might have a few things or breaknecks or, things that might not take a long time that you can work package together. Let's say that one of these breakneck pairs is done by the same trade. Let's say these two red ones. Let's say that we're going to have one crew go through and do the light red, and then the darker red here, it was going to be a different crew, and that's how they were going to flow. That's what we wanted to do. That's usually how we do that work in these type of areas. But if we can look at it and be like, instead of having one crew do this and one crew do that, could we have a single crew do both in each area and complete it in that area and then move on and do both of those things at that time? And if we did that, this is what work packaging those together would look like. And so in work packaging, maybe this one's inefficient. It's like, yeah, we have to pay for multiple mobilizations, and that's our major cost plus whatever we do at our bottleneck. And then this right here, that was a saving on, having less manpower on the job site. So there's a saving in maybe safety incidences and different things there. And maybe all of these breaknecks, we had a cost saving as well. All of that would be the analysis. Does it make sense if we're taking our bottleneck and or breaknecks and we're changing the production? Is there a change in the cost? And what is that change overall in planning or designing our production flow so that we can actually flow and get into that rhythm? And does that change in cost? Is that worth the change on the end of the schedule? Were we able to save the actual, 17, 18, 20, 42 weeks on the entire schedule? And if that's the case, think of how much GCs actually cost for any size of project, and is that cost comparison worth it? And now we can actually make a decision. Should we be doing this or should we not? And is there something else we can do? Is there a different option to optimize that might not be as cost impacting, right? So those are the things that we look at when designing or planning our production. This is how we go from this type of a schedule with resource efficiency, and we hone in and we get a better flow efficiency. It might not be perfect like we can see here, or maybe these don't flow perfectly, but we're within the rhythm and we're able to see those things and deal with them. I hope that you guys are as excited about this as I am. Finally, we have terms and definitions and processes to look at these things and adjust them. When we level the work and we're looking at our bottlenecks and we're looking at our breaknecks and we can align that production, we can eliminate a lot of that waste and actually deliver more value to our customer and flow efficiency. If you guys have any questions about this, please give me a call, reach out. I'm super excited to share this with you, and I hope to see you in the next one.